Hey, welcome to the very first lesson of statistics. We're beginning with the categorical and quantitative data, and it's a very important and fundamental topic throughout statistics course. We're starting with Unit 1, Part 1, describing data, and we're first starting with analyzing and identifying some of the graphs, which is like stem plots, histograms, and be able to learn how to describe the distribution for each graph, which is kind of similar for each, but it also has some like teeny tiny details that you have to pay attention to when you're answering the questions. So we're given an example in here. Below is the frequency table that contains the ACT math scores of the seniors in an AP Stat class from a prior school year. So first of all, this graph is what we call the stem plot. And we're starting by identifying some of the key terminologies. Individual, which stands for an object described by a set of data. And variable in statistics is a characteristic of an individual. It may take on different values for different individuals. Under variable category, we classify two types of variables. The first one is categorical, and it's basically means the variables that places an individual into a group. And quantitative is the variable that takes on a numerical value for which mathematical operations such as adding, subtracting, and averaging are of practical value. So a very good way to think about this is that categorical is what you say it like based on, for example, colors or right or wrong or like different types. You don't really use numerical values to describe categorical variables, which in the opposite, quantitative variables, you have to use numerical values a lot, and you can be able to, add, subtract, doing every mathematical operations for that, which you cannot do for categorical variables. And the objective is a student must be able to distinguish between categorical and quantitative variables, which is our purpose. And there is some examples which is determine whether the variable is categorical or quantitative. So I already put the answers next to them, but I also want to go over with it. So for example, like hair color, this is a categorical variable because you cannot like put numbers like for each hair color. It's impossible. And the crop yield is a quantitative because you can actually use numbers to measure the crop yield amount. And the college attendant is also a categorical variable because there's different types of colleges. And college major, same as the previous one, is also categorical. And diameter is quantitative. I believe like diameter is like the full. It's the double times of radius, and it's a very frequently used term in math. So there's no problem with it. And the weight, which is in pounds, is quantitative. And the starting salary is also quantitative because the amount of money. And the socioeconomic status is categorical. This one, because you see the term that status, we usually don't use numbers to describe a status for something. So 99% of the times it will be a categorical, no doubt about it. And the temperature, well, this one is a little bit ambiguous. Some may argue this is a quantitative, and some may argue the opposite. It really depends on how you look at it, and that's an interesting aspect of statistics. Even though it's a math class, it's not like any other math courses that there's only one solution for each problem, like most of the times. Statistics usually, it all really depends on how you see this thing, how you put your perspective into this issue. So in this case, like temperature, for example, if you're measuring it from the degrees, then it would definitely be a quantitative variable. But if you're like seeing that the temperature, like if it's cold or warm or hot or freezing, like different people will have different like aspect of identifying like, okay, which is like below which is cold and above which is hot. So then it will be a categorical variable. So as long as your explanation is logical and complete, then I think your like most of the case the arguments will be considered correct in stats. And the dog breed, it's a categorical, no doubt about it. And the ACT data listed in the table above is a distribution, which is what we saw right here. And a distribution tells us what values a variable takes and how often it takes these values. So distribution is basically how data is spread and how often it takes these values. This is basically means frequency. And distribution is a very important concept that we will be dealing a lot in stats class. So there's definitely a lot to learn from it. But for the first class, which is pretty much like an introductory course, I think these are enough, and we will continue do it in the next, I think, couple videos. But there's like a lot of key terms in here, which is pretty useful to memorize. And we saw the stem plot in this class, but we also will see a lot of like different graphs, such as like bar graphs and histograms, and you will be noticing that bar graph in the future is more of a describing for categorical variables. For histograms, it's more of a quantitative variable. And so basically stats course is what we summarize everything in tables or groups or graphs. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to it, and we will continue doing it in the future videos. And stay tuned, and I hope you learned something from this video. Thank you so much for watching.